Hi, and welcome to Stressed, the podcast to develop your stress resilience. Being ambitious and successful while living a happy life is possible. Learn how you can better cope with stress in day-to-day situations by applying tools and techniques that work for you. My name is Julia Arndt, and I'm extremely grateful that you decided to check out my podcast today. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to Stressed, the podcast to develop your stress resilience. I'm really excited that you decided to tune into my podcast episode today, where I will speak about the importance of self-care. I feel like I've been talking a lot about self-care as a tool in a few of my podcast episodes, but today I really want to get really clear on what self-care is all about and how you can create a beautiful new habit and integrate it into your weekly and daily lives. And for those of you that are tuning into my podcast now, since a couple of weeks, know that every 2 weeks I'm inviting a special interview guest to my podcast to really talk about their learnings and their wisdom of how they are starting to manage their stress and how they develop their stress resilience. So for this week's podcast episode, I invited Juliette Sakasegawa, who is a certified life and career coach, speaker, course creator and educator, and mentor for women entrepreneurs. She is passionate about helping women embrace their self-worth and learn how to prioritize themselves. I met Juliette during our life coaching certification, and we connected right from the start, and I was super excited to hear her story about how she learned how to take care of herself with 3 kids at home. And she has a really powerful Facebook group that she started a few years ago and has helped hundreds of women really start think more about their self-care and their self-worth. So I really hope that you are taking a lot of learnings away from this podcast episode. And I know that there are so many of you that are already listening to my podcast on a really regular basis. So I would really love to hear from you. I would love to hear from you. What kind of insights and learnings did you have while listening to this podcast episode? And you can share those learnings and insights with me and with Juliette by going onto my Instagram account at Blue Mountain Mindfulness. And I have a post for each of my podcast episodes, and I would love if you could post underneath what you took away from this podcast. So without further ado, let's jump into today's podcast episode on the importance of self-care and hear from Juliette about the tools and techniques that she uses to do that. Enjoy listening. Hi, Juliette. Nice to see you again. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for having me on. This is fun.
Yes, this is really fun. I'm really excited to have you today as my next podcast guest. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about self-care. But before we're jumping into the topic, which I'm super excited about, I'd love to just pick up our listeners. So tell us a little bit more about where you are right now, what you've been up to this morning.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'm in San Diego where I live. I'm in my kitchen where I do a lot of my work. And this morning, I've done a lot of things already. Actually, I took my kids to school. I have 3 kids. Okay. Came home and I've already talked to a couple of clients. I ran a group session with a group that it was actually our last session this morning. So that group is over now. Okay. And now I'm here talking to you.
Okay, great. And it's only 11:30, so that sounds like a really busy morning.
Yeah, very busy. Yeah.
Nice. So tell us a little bit more about yourself. For people that don't know you, you're already starting to talk a little bit about your kids and about coaching. So tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So I have 3 kids. I have a husband. We live in San Diego. And I'm a former elementary school teacher, but I left that job 7 years ago to be home with my kids. And now I am a certified life and career coach. Mm-hmm. I work mostly with women, with a few men too. And I work with women a lot on self-care, priorities, helping them achieve their goals. And it's really fun. I love it.
Yeah, great. And you're a full-time mom of 3 kids. How old are your kids?
They are 4 and 7 and 10.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So
Yeah.
that's probably a handful as well.
Yes, it is. For sure.
So how we got to speak about all of this and why I was so excited to have you as my interview guest is that you have a closed Facebook group that you've been running for a couple of years now on
Mm-hmm.
self-care. And self-care is a really important topic when talking about stress management. So I wanted to have you today as my specialist in talking more about self-care. And the first question I have for you on this topic is, self-care is a curious thing because I feel like a lot of people, it's like the last thing people do. They're always like taking care of everyone else before actually practicing self-care. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I always say is that taking care of others actually means taking care of yourself first. So why do you think is it so difficult for people to practice self-care?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think it's difficult for people to practice self-care because it's about us. And I think that we sort of have this tendency to focus on everybody else all the time. I don't know. It's funny because that's my story, my self-care story. I'm actually in the middle of writing a blog about it right now, but it kind of started about 7 years ago after I had my second daughter. And I was just overwhelmed with everything else in my life, with being a mom, with being a wife, with having a full-time job, just being so busy that I was not paying attention to me at all. And I actually kind of had a breakdown about it. And yeah, I think that we think we think we're being helpful when we're putting all of our energy on other people and other things.
Mm-hmm.
But really what we need to do is focus on ourselves first so that we are able to help everybody else. And you posted a quote yesterday on Instagram, and then I posted it today, the same quote about, is it by Jim Rohn? Is that the right name?
Yeah, Jim Rohn.
Yeah, about saying that I'm going to take care of me to take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that's what it's all about, is that if we take care of ourselves, we're better able to take care of everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And we forget that step. I don't know if it's that we don't want to be selfish.
Mm-hmm.
We have a really hard time loving ourselves and appreciating ourselves.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really hard for people to start with themselves.
Yeah. I think it comes a little bit from that selfish part, that people think like, oh, like if I take care of myself, people will think I'm selfish. And now I have 3 kids like you, for example. And it's like, well, there's just no time for me. So I feel like it's always the easiest thing to cross off your list when you have too much to do.
Yeah.
So to pick us up a little bit, I'm actually curious because you said you got overwhelmed yourself and you had that experience. So can you tell us a little bit more about like what happened and what did you do to change?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, like I said, it was 7 years ago. I just had my second child. So it wasn't a new mom, but I was a new mom to 2 kids. Mm-hmm. And I went back to work, and I've always been somebody who just really wants to be really good at everything, and kind of that perfectionist attitude. Mm-hmm. And so I was trying really hard to be perfect at being a mom and perfect at my job and perfect for my husband. And I wanted my house to be perfect and all of that. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't even really aware of the idea of taking care of myself. I don't think that was something that I was really taught, or it wasn't in my consciousness to take care of me. Mm-hmm. And things just started to fall apart really from the inside out. I didn't show it at first, but I was not feeling well, and I was feeling like a mess on the inside, but I didn't want people to know. Mm-hmm. And I really did kind of break down, and there was one day that I just like fell apart. And I knew that there was a problem and then I needed to do something about it. So I think my first step was like some family and friends kind of seeing that I wasn't myself and reaching out to me about it. And it brought attention to it for me. But I ended up reaching out to a therapist. And she is the one who brought my attention to self-care. Like, what are you doing for yourself? And I was like, nothing. What are you talking about? I don't have time.
Yeah.
I don't have time for that. It was like a really foreign thing for me to even think about.
Yeah.
But over the past 7 years, it's become like a job for me, really, to figure out what I need and to give it to myself, because I've learned that when I do that, I'm better equipped to handle all that other stuff. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
And can you, because I think it's always really interesting to mention as well a couple maybe of those early warning signals, or you're even saying that there were already maybe, you know, you had like a breakdown or something. What was it for you that was really alarming and that maybe brought that to the point that even friends and family members saw that something was going on with you?
Yeah, I was feeling off. I was feeling anxious all the time, kind of worried about everything, crying more than is normal for me, you know, kind of breaking down or crying about things that are not things I wouldn't normally be upset about. And also a lot of like yelling or losing it at my family members or people that I loved, like my kids. I had at that time, my son was 3. And I remember feeling like I'm yelling at my 3-year-old way too much. Like, he doesn't deserve this, you know? So just a really short fuse, which was not the norm for me, you know? And I think something that's important too is to kind of know what's the normal for you, because just, I'm not saying that if you're yelling at your kid, that means that there's anything wrong with that, really. You know, it's just that what's normal for you, and do you feel off?
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're not yourself?
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. Early warning signals can be so different from person to person. That's why I thought it's really interesting to hear a couple from you as well. So when you started to see the therapist and like become aware of the whole self-care topic, what did you start integrating into your life?
Really small things. I guess first of all, I had to understand that self-care wasn't selfish, because I really thought that it was. And I thought that speaking up for myself or saying what I wanted was inappropriate or was selfish or rude. So I had to kind of make it over that hump of like, it's okay for me to say, I need this thing right now. But it just was really small. She actually had me write a list of just all the things I could think of that I like to do. And it could have been small things or big things. But even just as much to like stop on the way home at Starbucks and get myself a coffee was like, yeah, I want to do that. I want to do that for me, you know, small things like that. Taking time by myself and asking my husband to like take the kids for a few minutes so that I could just go in the other room and take some deep breaths. I started meditating. I started doing a lot more yoga, things like that. Walking. I'm a big walker.
Okay.
So taking lots of walks.
Yeah. Okay, great. And then how did like that whole self-care group idea come along?
So I started my self-care community 3 years ago. It's actually almost exactly 3 years ago. And that idea came to me because, well, I started working for a company selling skincare. And because of that job, I was talking to a lot of women. And a lot of different things were coming out from different women about the amount of time that they have, you know, to take care of their skin or the lack of time that they have to take care of their skin. And it was funny because I started to get reminded of what I had gone through myself and my journey. And I thought, you know what? I'm not the only person here who needs self-care. Like women need self-care. And so just in talking to some friends and some people through that business, I thought I'm going to start a group on Facebook. Why not? Just to start talking about self-care, to support people who need it. So I just started the group, and at first I just invited my friends to join it, or whoever wanted to. And it's just grown over the past 3 years and evolved a lot and changed over time. Yeah. That was the beginning of it.
Nice. And how many people are in the group now?
370-ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And so what are, like, you know, a lot of listeners, I'm sure, that are curious now to know of what can they do in order to practice more self-care. What are tools and techniques that you gave to that group and that you can share with the listeners?
So I think my first tip is always, if you have no idea, it's that exercise that I mentioned that my therapist had me do, which is to make a list, because a lot of us don't even know what we like
Yeah.
or what is self-care for you. That, because I think it's different for everyone. And I always say that to people, that I think we think we're supposed to do a certain thing. And we also think we don't have time for that certain thing.
Mhm.
But it doesn't have to be what other people are doing. It's whatever for you brings you good feelings, really, calm, peace, joy, happiness, just restores you. And so for some people, that actually might be vacuuming. I mean, it really could be. And for other people,
I love
it's
that.
taking a bath, and some people feel like they don't like baths, and some people prefer a shower, whatever it is, but it's so individualized. So my first tip is to really just make a list of anything that you can think of that you love doing.
Mhm.
And, or it doesn't have to be something you love doing, but something that restores you.
Yeah.
And it kind of gives you that fresh start feeling.
Yeah.
And then once you have your list, then I just suggest that you start small and pick something off of that list that you can do. Even just make a plan for the week. Like on Monday, I'm going to stop at Starbucks and get myself a coffee. On Tuesday, I'm going to do 15 minutes of yoga, on whatever it is that you want, but just start really small and make a little bit of time for yourself, and just start to notice kind of how you feel when you do that.
Yeah.
That's the beginning, I think.
Okay. I love that. Yeah. And there are so many things that resonate with me when I've been, when I still was at my company and I talked to people and I would start coaching them and asking them, well, what do you like to do? They would literally be like, oh, I have to think about this for a second. I don't know what I like to do, because we're so getting involved with all these other things that we really do forget about ourselves. So I love that first step of really creating a list of the things that you enjoy doing. And I love the example of vacuum cleaning. I'm, for example, also a person that loves to have like a clean, nice looking house. And in the morning, at the moment, I literally go through the house and clean up, because it makes me feel happy. And I feel like I have like a fresh start to my day.
Yeah, exactly. And somebody else might be like, that sounds horrible.
Exactly.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So, and that's fine.
Yeah, one of the things that you mentioned, and I'd love to talk a little bit about this, especially if we have also male listeners and not just female listeners, is because you mentioned, like, your group is mostly female and women, and we don't take care of ourselves. But I wonder if men are even almost worse at practicing self-care.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
In my experience, yes, I would say yes. I think men have a lot of pressure on them to be masculine, and to, maybe it's to support their families, to be hard workers, all these things. And yeah, they're not encouraged to take care of themselves, or to nurture themselves. And if a man were to say, oh, I'm going to go take a bath, we almost might make fun of them. That's just sort of our society.
Yeah.
So for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really, like, I haven't actually really thought about this before, but now that you kind of brought it up, I was like, well, I feel like men are practicing even less self-care. And I see it with my fiance, for example, as well. He is an entrepreneur, he's running his own business, and I'm constantly telling him, you should do something for yourself, because, he gets like stressed out, and and I can tell that he needs time for himself. He needs to disconnect from his phone mostly, because that's how his business is coming in a lot, talking to clients. And yeah, it's so important, especially also for the male part of the society, to practice self-care and to make it a non-female, or like a non-gender specific thing of being like, hey, it's really important, no matter if you're a man or a woman, to do things for yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. I really
Another
agree.
thing that I just recently heard and that I really resonated with was about how we have a feeling that being mindful or practicing self-care or doing these things is just another thing to the to-do list of the day. What do you think about that kind of?
Yeah, I hear that a lot. Like everyone is so busy that it's like, oh, I just can't add one more thing. Like you're asking me to add another thing to my list.
Mhm.
And I get it. I really get it because I've been there, and I'm there sometimes too. Like I feel that way also.
Mhm.
But when I take a step back and I really think about it, what I know is true is that self-care, it adds to your day. Like you,
Right. Mhm.
we take something off your plate and put the self-care there, because
Mhm.
it's going to, especially over time, I feel like it's cumulative. It is going to improve your life.
Yeah,
It just is.
for sure.
So there's other things that are not as important that can be taken off the list.
Yeah.
And we're all so busy, and it's almost like a status symbol in our society, I think, to be busy. Like, how are you? Oh, good, really busy, you
Mhm.
know? And if somebody were to say, "Oh, I'm totally calm and relaxed. I'm not busy at all," we would almost judge them for that,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, for sure.
So what's wrong with that picture?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm just gonna let that sink in like this. I love that. And was there anything that was really surprising to you or a revelation when you had this interaction with your Facebook group?
Hmm. Um, I mean, I think just how many people are like, oh my gosh, I need more self-care. And
Mhm.
also, like how hard it is. You brought this up at the beginning of our talk, that it's so hard for people to participate in self-care.
Mhm.
And that's something that I just am continuing to investigate. Like, why is this hard?
Mhm.
What's so hard about it? And I don't mean that in a like, it's not hard for me. Why is it
Mhm.
so hard for you? Like, why
Yeah,
is it so hard for us
for us.
collectively?
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And great. So I always have a couple of questions at the end of each interview
Hmm.
that I want to go with you through as well. The first one being, what are you most grateful for?
Hmm. I'm I'm most grateful for this journey that I'm on, because I just feel like I have learned so much and I've grown so much, and I appreciate I appreciate discovering self care, which has led me to get to know myself better. Um, yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. We haven't really talked about this, but what are the biggest advantages you think of self-care?
Being more present
Mhm.
and more fulfilled in my life,
Mhm.
because if I compare it to where I was 7 years ago, like just now, I'm able to spend time with my kids that I enjoy, and I just spend more enjoyable time now
Mhm.
because of
Mhm.
self care.
Do you have like a ritual or routine that you do like every day or every week that is really like your own time?
It changes because I'm a person. I have a really busy schedule, and I have a lot of different things going on with my 3 kids and all that. The one thing that stays the same is that every Sunday I look ahead at my week
Mhm.
and fit and look to see where I can fit my time in. It's
Mm.
not always at the same time, but
Okay.
I always make that a priority to schedule it in at the beginning of the week.
Oh, that's a really good tip. I love that actually. Great. Cool. The second question is your three most important wisdoms that you would pass on to the rest of the listeners.
Yeah. Self care is not selfish.
Mhm.
Um, you can have healthy boundaries and be a good person.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people think that if they say no to people, or if they, have boundaries, that it means that they're rude or that they're not kind, and that's not true.
Mhm.
Um, and it's okay to ask for help.
Mhm.
We need help, and we're not weak if we ask for help.
Yeah. Great. I love those. Thanks so much for sharing them.
Thank you.
And is there a book that you would recommend that changed your life or that really inspired you in this journey?
Yeah, I have two actually. The first one, and I feel like a broken record with both of them because I talk about them a lot. The first one is called The Disease to Please, and it's by Harriet Braiker. And that's all about being a people pleaser, which is something I didn't know I was one, but then I was introduced to that book, and oh my gosh, if you have boundary issues or people pleasing issues, it's an amazing, amazing book.
Great. Okay.
And then the second book, I love Brene Brown, and her book, The Gifts of Imperfection, really, really helped me a lot. I go back to that book a lot. The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown.
Wow. I love that. That's great. I haven't read these books, but they sound super interesting. So I will put it put it in the show notes as well for people if they want to check them out. And what are your next plans? What's next in your journey?
Oh, exciting. Well, some things are I just started a YouTube channel, like brand new. So that's I'm working on that. And I have a couple projects that are kind of secret right now, but they're coming soon. And I'm also, I'm going to start training to be a coaching instructor. So that's a big thing that I'm doing next too.
Okay. And for the YouTube channel, what is it called?
It's called Take Care of You TV.
Okay.
I think you have to search my name though to find the channel.
Okay. I will.
And then also my Facebook group is called Take Care of You on Facebook.
Cool. Maybe you can send me the links and I'll put them in the show notes as well.
Great.
And tell me a bit, I'm curious about the YouTube channel. Because you said you just launched it, what kind of videos can people find on there?
Yeah. So it's all about taking care of you in a lot of different aspects. All my favorite topics, time management, healthy boundaries, self-care, empowerment, things like that.
Great. Okay, I'm curious. I will definitely check it out. And so we already mentioned all of these great things, how people can reach out to you. So I will put your Facebook group and your YouTube channel in there. And then if they want to reach out to you, I'll put your website in there too.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay, awesome. Is there anything else you would like to say to our listeners? Anything to feel complete or anything that we haven't maybe mentioned yet?
I don't think so. I think you did a great job of asking me great questions.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for being here today. It was a pleasure to have you, and it's such a huge topic, and I'm so excited that we talked about self-care and what people can do, just at least those first initial steps as well, to really get into their own self-care practice. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed this episode, I would be extremely happy and grateful if you could leave me a comment and a 5-star rating. If you know someone who would benefit from the information I talked about today, please feel free to share it with them, no matter if it is your friends, your colleagues, and/or your family members. You will always find all links and a summary of the podcast in the show notes. It would be great if we could connect on Instagram or via email. You can find all details of how to find me in the show notes as well. In that way, you can also send me any questions that you might have. And as I mentioned, I also have a wonderful YouTube channel now where you can post comments and questions, so please reach out. I'm glad you're listening to this podcast. Thank you so much for your trust. With gratitude, Julia.